one of the areas, and a lot of it has to do with government, but it's also demographic, is aged care and the healthcare sector. And you sort of think we're in a situation where our society, our demography, is actually ageing faster than any other state apart from Tasmania. So you sort of think that's something which is happening worldwide. If we're ahead of the game, what are the types of services and goods that we're sort of creating in this area, which is now the biggest employer in South Australia? What are we going to do to take that to the rest of the world? Everyone goes on about China. Well, China is actually going to be the world's oldest community probably in 15 or 20 years' time, because the population growth has really stopped. So you sort of say, what are those things that we're doing here, because we're seeing it first, that we could actually sell into those communities? And I take one thing we sort of don't recognise, we take for granted, is the land's title system here in South Australia. The Torrens title system started here. We'll take it for granted. The rest of the world doesn't have it. You sort of think, are there those types of things we're doing in healthcare which we could take to the rest of the world? Just like we took wine marketing and the oenology courses to the rest of the world.
So is there a role there for education, for example, in aged care training?
Yeah, and I believe, I reckon on the water side there's a big issue with training, which we can take to the rest of the world. The healthcare, the aged care, all those areas are going to need a lot more professionals in the future. Now, we're struggling even in South Australia to fill those roles. So you sort of say the rest of the world's going to be following us. So what are we doing to say, here's something which we all see as being a cost to the economy and the society, but in fact it's going to be a significant generator of jobs. So how do we provide the services, the accounting, the management services, the education, the actual hospital care side of things, the construction of hospitals? That's a massively growing demand worldwide.
So where does the onus sit on that? Does it sit with government? Does it sit with industry groups, individual businesses? Who puts together the economic plan B for South Australia?
I'd say it's going to have to come increasingly from the business sector themselves, and particularly the smaller businesses. But the government's got to have a view as to what they can do to either get out of the way, to get down the costs of actually doing business here, particularly payroll, tax, work cover, those types of things. Some of the issues with education, some of the issues with actually having people be able to work at home, because these are service sector industries. So you sort of say, not so much what we normally say in South Australia is what can the government do for us. It's probably more what don't want the government doing to actually get out of the way to reduce the cost of doing business. It comes back to this impact on sort of confidence. South Australians seem to have actually been more affected, and they're sort of affected like Tasmanians, because I think we're going through the same type of transformation. But you look at confidence here, which is, as you say, reflected both in the retail spending and the housing sector, is really well down. And you can sort of see that we're almost the worst compared to Tasmania. And then you say, well, there are other states, such as West Australia and Queensland, where confidence has actually been rising. Now, they've got big mining sectors, but they've got a more diverse mining sector in some ways. Although, again, when you look at the mining projects in South Australia, we've probably got a more diverse set of projects, both in hand and coming in terms of commodities, than any other state. And that's my concern is for the Plan B, is to say, what are these projects that we can get up and running, and what's the state government got to do or get out of the way of in order to get things going? And that's the mining sector. I reckon it's also in housing, and I reckon it's in property construction. There's a broader set of issues for South Australia than just the mining sector, which I believe is affecting.
So you've work to do. Darryl, thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin.